made it very clear that he was okay with how the war on drugs was being executed. One time that he told the soldiers and the police to shoot female activists in their genitalia.
Today, DW is talking with Philippine Vice President Leni Robredo about politics, extrajudicial killings, and Manila's war on drugs. Vice President Robredo, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'll go straight into my question first. There have been continued reports of violence and a state of lawlessness in the Philippines. There's news of environmental activists, human rights defenders, and of course the drug-related killings. To what extent has Mr. Duterte's violent rhetoric contributed to this culture of violence?
I would like to believe that the president's words and actions have had a great impact on, the mindset that dissent from these environmental advocates, human rights advocates, are not welcome. We are very much aware that in many of the president's speeches, there have been threats of violence to many sectors of society who have shown their dissent. For one, if I remember right, the president encouraged attacks on the Catholic Church. And has encouraged the burning of lumad schools. In fact, there was also one time that he told the soldiers and the police to shoot female activists in their genitalia. The men around him, the spokesperson, for example, are always quick to defend that these threats are mere words and the president didn't mean to pursue them. But he's the president. His power and his authority really makes a great impact on the rhetoric that this is the kind of environment that we are encouraging. The culture of impunity around us. It would seem like the president is the one encouraging such a culture. Secondly, he has shown a very big aversion to dissent. There have been many instances that when individuals or organizations have been very vocal of their opposition to some of the president's policies, the reaction is really unexpected. Just for instance, just lately, the countries who have signified their support on the investigation of human rights abuses in the Philippines are being blocked to provide us with loans and with grants. And the message is that number one, that dissent is not welcome. That number two, there is no, the accountability of officials are not important. So when this is the message that you give, especially to implementers of the law, this is very dangerous. And I think this has contributed so much in the manner that activists now are being killed. Just the other day, I was reading the news that during this administration, there has been about 60% increase in murder cases. And that tells a lot in the culture that is being cultivated amongst us now.
So do you think it would also take words from Mr. Duterte to stop it?
Actually, he has always attempted to take back things that he have said already. But I can surmise that it would have been better if he had not, said those words at all. Because it gives mixed signals. Even if he takes back his word, it gives mixed signals on the intent of, on the intent of why he said them, of what the president really wants, And this mixed signals is not at all good as far as the implementers of the law are concerned, because there is a sense of encouragement. There is a sense of encouragement that um, these actions would be tolerated. In fact, if you remember correctly, there have been many times that the president assured members of the Philippine National Police or soldiers that they will be protected, that nothing bad will befall upon them if they follow his orders. So that in itself is dangerous, to say the very least.
A lot of the violence over the last 3 years can be traced back to the administration's so-called war on drugs. And you have criticized this policy along with other human rights organizations. So how has this now how would you explain President Duterte's continued support still for the war on drugs?
It is difficult to say. We can speculate. Number one, might be because the president is on top of a long line of, the implementors are members of the Philippine National Police. And the implementors report to the leadership of the Philippine National Police. The Philippine National Police reports to the DILG. And the DILG reports to the president. So there is some sort of a detachment. Even if the president has time and again made it very clear that he was okay with how the war on drugs was being executed. He has also made statements reprimanding members of the Philippine National Police, saying that I will not tolerate those who have been abusing their powers. So, this types of propaganda, I think, makes it very confusing for people to directly implicate the president as being the one directly behind the extrajudicial killings. That's one speculation. The other speculation is, if you look at the statistics now, the D&E, who are usually the victims of the war on drugs, are no longer the biggest chunk of the population. We have a bigger chunk, which is the middle class already.
That are being targeted?
Not being targeted, but being benefited in a way. If you look at the narrative, there is always a belief that the streets are safer now. Although statistics would prove that it is not at all true, because murder is 60% higher. That it is now so much better because we can walk safely at night. We can walk safely at night. That it is good that this drug elements are being wiped out because it is for the benefit of the bigger chunk of the population. I think that is helping, in the sense that those who do not belong to the very poor, who are being victimized, do not really appreciate the implications of the war on drugs. But when you talk to the very poor from many of the urban poor areas in Manila, the narrative is so much different. The narrative is so much different, and many of the families of the victims are saying that we are being victimized because we are poor. But a bigger chunk of the population is appreciative because of the fact that they feel they are much safer now. So those are speculations that may be contributory to the fact that the president is not really bearing the brunt of the implications of the war on drugs.
I'm going to go to your vice presidency now,
Yes.
and your relationship with the president.
Mhm.
You have been charged with sedition
Sedition.
and plotting to overthrow the president.
Yes.
This is unprecedented.
Yes.
Are you being targeted?
If you look at the personalities behind, who is the private, who has accused us of sedition? It is the CIDG of the Philippine National Police. Who is lawyering for the CIDG? It is the Office of the Solicitor General. These are government instrumentalities who have supported such a baseless contempt. Perhaps if I was not the vice president, or perhaps if I was actually very supportive of the president 100%, this kind of case would have been dismissed already. In the sense that it is very obvious that this is based on lies. I was looking at the complaint, and my only supposed participation in everything was that I supposedly attended a meeting at the Ateneo de Manila. There was a particular time and place when and where the meeting transpired. And when we reviewed where we were on that particular day, I was in Bulacan. I attended 3 events in Bulacan, and those events were very public. Those were attended by hundreds of people, and media was even there to cover those events. So it would have been physically impossible for me to be there. And CIDG is supposed to be the criminal investigation unit of the PNP. It would have been easiest for them to check whether there was any veracity in the complaint. But they turned out to be the one accusing us. If you look at my co-respondents, these are officials of the Catholic Church. These are members of the opposition. So it's very obvious that we are being targeted.
From day one, your vice presidency has been contested.
Yes.
Would it have been different if you were more supportive of the president?
I guess so. There was a time when I thought that we would be able to work really well. Right after the elections, there were signs that not everything is good. I remember I tried to seek for an audience with the president, with then President-elect. I wanted to personally congratulate him and offer him my support, but I was never given any time to meet with him. There was already preparations for a joint inauguration because that was the tradition. And then a few days before the inauguration, we were told that the president did not want a joint inauguration, so we had to prepare a separate one for myself. So those were indications already. But when we met in one event, I think the president saw that I was not a threat at all. And when I asked if I could see him in Malacanang, I was given that time already. I visited him in Malacanang, and that was, I think, a week or 2 after the inauguration. And then a few days after that, I was asked to join the cabinet. I thought that those were signs that even if we belong to opposite political camps, we would be able to find a common ground. The first few months of my being housing secretary were okay. I would like to believe that we were working well together. I attended the cabinet meetings very regularly. But when the extrajudicial killings became an issue, I felt that I had an obligation to, say my piece. It was something that I was very much against of. So I was very vocal about my opposition. I was not opposed to the drug war. In fact, I was very supportive of it. I remember there was one time when I asked for a meeting with the DILG and the cabinet secretary, some of the cabinet secretaries and the other 9 agencies. I requested for a meeting. I was asking how can we be of help. We felt that drugs was really a major problem that we were facing. So I thought that was going to be it. But again, when the extrajudicial killing started happening, I was very vocal against it. I remember there was one cabinet meeting when I started giving out statements. There was one cabinet meeting when I actually expressed my appreciation to the president. I told him, Mr. President, I really appreciate it that even if I am vocal against some of your policies, you have not taken it against me. And he said it's just work. So I was very hopeful. I felt we could work on things we agreed on, and my views would be respected in things that I do not agree with. But shortly after that, I was barred from attending cabinet meetings. It was an expression that he was not okay with the dissent. But even after I was barred from cabinet meetings, when we would meet during some events, he was always very civil. In fact, there was one time, I think it was during a PMA graduation, he said that he would be inviting me for a dinner in Malacanang, which never happened. But despite that, I think we're doing okay at the office of the Vice President. Despite I've tried to hold my horses in some issues, but in issues I felt very strongly about, I really expressed my opposition to some of the policies of this administration. I think the ideal situation still would be that we work well together for the benefit of the Filipino people. But despite the difficulties, I think we're doing okay. We have managed to position the office in such a way that we won't have to depend on government too much, and yet are still able to do what we think we need to do. That is why our anti-poverty program is at its full swing. And we have been given, since last year, we have been given by Congress funds for that. Not too much, but still we started from nothing. It's been a recognition that we're doing the right thing. Most of our funds come from private partners. We've been pushing for collaboration between government and the private sector, and I think to a very large extent we've been successful.
The Philippines is quite unique in that way, that the president and the vice president are elected from different parties, don't necessarily have to be from the same party. How has that made for a working relationship between you and the president?
It's difficult. It's difficult in the sense that because we belong to different political parties, there really would be expected different points of view in many issues. But over the years, we've had many elections where the president, the vice president did not come from the same party, but have managed to work together. I feel like it should have been the ideal situation. There is some good in the president and the vice president not coming from the same party because it provides for checks and balances. But if they are able to work together despite their differences, then it would have been for the benefit of the people. I think from the time of President Ramos, the vice president elected is always coming from another political party other than the political party of the president, but they have worked well together. The vice president has been given a cabinet post, which is not indispensable. The president can choose not to give the vice president a cabinet post, which is okay, for as long as the working relationship would be healthy. But right now, because I have been vocal of my opposition against many policies, the president has not been okay with that, and it's a pity because I think Again, despite our differences, I think it would have still been possible for us to work together.
Your vice presidency is being contested on another front.
Yes.
So this is Bongbong Marcos, ran against you for the vice presidency and lost, but has filed an electoral protest. How are you preparing for the possibility that he might win this electoral protest?
You know, for one thing, I could not see a situation where he would win. We are very confident of our victory. He filed the case based on three grounds before the Supreme Court. While I cannot talk about the details of the case because of a gag order, just to contextualize, of the three causes of action, one has already been dismissed, and that was questioning the validity of the elections. Two more causes of action are pending. One is he was asking for the revision of votes, meaning to say the votes, the ballots from contested precincts will be opened and will be counted again. And the third cause of action was he was asking the Supreme Court to nullify some of the results of elections of certain parts of the country. But during the preliminary conference, he was asked to choose three provinces, which he thought would best exemplify the fraud that he was claiming. And he chose. We were not the ones who chose. We did not have a hand in choosing. It was him who chose. He chose Camarines Sur, Iloilo, and Negros Oriental. And the process happened already. The process was supervised by the Presidential Electoral Tribunal. He had watchers there. We had watchers there. And the process is done already. Of course, we are aware of the results of the process. And because we are aware, while we cannot divulge at this point the results because we are prevented from doing so, because of the results, we are confident the Supreme Court will act on it. What is the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is, despite the results, the PET will still decide to continue with the process. And continuing the process means opening all the other ballots of all the other precincts that is being questioned. I forgot how many there are, but there is a huge number. The three precincts that were made the pilot provinces, the three precincts took almost 3 years for it to be done. So if this will continue, I don't know if it will be done in 2022. But as far as I'm concerned, it would have been best if the decision will come as soon as possible. Because our experience was that in the last 3 years that the process was ongoing, Marcos made it a platform, to convince people, to do propaganda, to do fake news, to convince people that this is what the facts are. When in truth and in fact, everything that they are trying to say are very far from the truth. So, in fact, I think it was last month or 2 months ago, we already filed a motion before the Presidential Electoral Tribunal asking the PET to already make a decision based on the results of the process. We were awaiting for the decision last Tuesday. It was postponed for another day. We were hoping that it would come out next week. We are hopeful, but then we are also aware of the realities and the complexities behind the process. But again, because I cannot talk of the details of the case, we would have to wait until that decision. So it's not as if the Supreme Court does not favor our our request, then he will sit as vice president already, because that's what he's been convincing people that it is what is going to happen. It would just mean that the process will continue.
It's also kind of strange considering that you're halfway through your term, and
That's
then
true.
before we finish another count, I don't know how long that will take for a decision. What's the point?
And I don't have money. I don't have money, and it's costing us money to proceed with a recount, because we hire watchers, we hire lawyers. It's not as if we have unlimited supply of funds to be able to, to pursue this. So it would be best for us that, you based on the law and jurisprudence, the Supreme Court decides, using the results of the process as a basis already.
Mr. Duterte's term ends in 2022.
Yes.
Are you planning to run for president?
I don't have plans of running. I never had plans of running. Even when I ran as representative of the 3rd District of Camarines Sur, that was accidental. And it happened on the last hour. We had a candidate already. It came at the heels of the death of my husband. After the death of my husband, I was applying to be a regional trial court judge. Before my husband died, we had candidates already for our local political party. But then after he died, the party had problems internally, and they were looking for a leader. At first, their request was for me to intervene and try to fix the mess that was happening already, and I did. And during the last day of filing, I remember it very well, October 5 of 2012. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was filing my certificate of candidacy already, because the candidate we agreed on withdrew his candidacy the last minute. So I was a substitute. And when I ran and I won, the mindset was, I'm just a transition candidate. I will be here only for 1 term until our party would be able to fix the internal mess. But then I was preparing, towards the end of my term as congressman, the decision point was, should I still seek for another term, or should I stop already as planned? And then all of a sudden, our party needed a vice presidential candidate, and I was actually betting for someone, and then I found myself being the only option. I felt it was a responsibility. It was a responsibility. Of course, I did not expect that it would be this. The environment will be this difficult. Everyone in the party was convincing me it's easy to become vice president. If you win, then it's easy to become vice president. But then I won. And the 2022 is already out there. But I feel like even if I'm keeping my options open, I feel like if I think of the 2022 elections already, I would be doing a great disservice to what we're doing now in the office. Our Angat Buhay program adopted the poorest communities in the country. And these poorest communities are actually the farthest. They're the farthest from the centers. They're the communities where the population of these communities are not exactly big, because they're very far. If I think of 2022 already, I don't think I would still be going to these communities. The most natural and politically sound thing to do is to concentrate in Metro Manila, where most of the people are, and to concentrate our efforts on provinces that are heavily populated. And I think that will go against what we have set ourselves to do. So I don't want to say, before I've been saying I will not never enter politics. And whenever I'm asked, even my husband asked me to substitute him, I told him over my dead body. I'm not saying that now because I've eaten my word so many times already. So whenever I'm asked, I always say anything is possible. If you look at our history, the presidency is always destiny. So many people have aspired and prepared for it. But most of the presidents that were elected were kind of unexpected. So I don't, given our history, I think no matter how hard you prepare for it, if it's not for you, then you will not get it. So even if I'm open, I'm not setting my sights on 2022. I promised my children that this would be the last, 2016 would be the last elections for me. But then I do realize that I have an obligation to pursue. So I'm just doing the best I can as vice president, given the limited mandate, given the kind of climate and environment that we have, and given the difficulties. I just plan on doing the best that I can. And, anything can happen by the time, maybe during the second half of 2021. And that's very near.
Very near.
Very near. Less than 2 years.
And on that note, thank you very much, Vice President Robredo, for joining us today.
Thank you.